Prince Kale lived in the Grand Dragon Palace, a place filled with glowing walls, floating lanterns, and guards who walked with pride. Every dragonkin in the palace was tall, strong, and powerful. They had sharp claws, wings that shone like metal, and bodies built for strength. But Kale, the young prince, was different from all of them. He could not stand, not even for a moment. Since he was a child, his legs had been weak. Dragon healers tried everything, spells, potions, ancient medicine, but nothing changed. His wings were strong, his spirit was bright, but his legs felt like soft cloth that could not hold him. Because of this, many nobles whispered behind his back. Some said he could never be emperor. Some said he was a sign of bad luck. None of them ever said these things near the Dragon Emperor, Kale's father. But Kale still heard the whispers when the halls were quiet. Kale spent most of his days in his private rooms, resting on cushions or sitting near the high windows. He loved looking outside the sky, where dragons practiced flying. He wished he could join them. He wished he could walk even a few steps on his own. One afternoon, when the sun shone through the crystal windows, a new group of human servants arrived at the palace. They were part of a peace deal between Earth and the Dragonkin Empire. Most humans came to clean the halls, help in the gardens, or carry scrolls for the court. To the dragons, humans were small and gentle, but useful. Kale watched from his window as they entered the courtyard. Among them was a young human woman named Mira. She looked simple, quiet, and careful with her steps. While others kept their heads low, she looked around with curiosity. She did not look scared like the others. She looked interested. Kale did not think much of it at first, but something about her calm face stayed in his mind. Later that day, Kale's door slid open, and his old caretaker came in with a worried look. "Prince Kale," he said softly, "the nobles are arguing again. They say a prince who cannot stand cannot rule." Kale looked away. He had heard these words too many times. His caretaker tried to cheer him, but Kale simply asked to be left alone. When the door closed, the room became silent again. Kale sighed and moved himself toward the window. His hands were strong, so he could pull himself along the floor with no problem. He did it almost every day. But today, something went wrong. His hand slipped, and he lost balance. Kale fell onto the floor with a heavy sound. Pain shot through his arms. He grit his teeth and tried to sit up again, but it was harder than usual. Just then, the door opened. A human maid stepped in. It was Mira. She froze when she saw the prince on the ground. Her eyes widened, but not with fear, only with concern. "Are you hurt?" she asked quietly. Most humans would panic. Most would call for guards immediately. But Mira moved closer, slow and respectful. Kale stared at her, surprised. No one had ever spoken to him like that, gently, without pity or fear. "I am fine," Kale answered, though he was clearly not. "You should leave. The guard will scold you for coming in." Mira shook her head. "I can help you sit up," she said. Kale blinked. No one outside the Dragonkin healers had ever offered help like that. Before he could respond, she placed a soft cloth on the floor and helped lift his shoulders. She did not grab him roughly. She moved with care, paying attention to his comfort. Humans were small compared to Dragonkin, but she helped him with all the strength she had. Once he was sitting up again, Kale let out a slow breath. "You shouldn't touch a prince," he told her. "You shouldn't be alone on the floor," she answered simply. Kale stared at her. She was not afraid of him. She was not impressed by his title. She just saw a person who needed help. It was strange and new, and for the first time in a long time, Kale felt something warm in his chest, something like hope. A soft knocking came from outside, and Mira quickly stepped back. A dragon guard slid the door open and frowned at her. "Human, you are not assigned to this wing." "She was helping me," Kale said before the guard could scold her. The guard blinked, confused. Humans rarely spoke to princes, and princes rarely defended humans. But Kale's voice was calm and firm. The guard bowed his head and left. Mira looked at the prince, unsure if she should stay or go. "Thank you," Kale said quietly. She smiled, small and warm. "If you ever fall again," she said gently, "you can call for me." After she left, Kale looked at the empty doorway. For the first time in years, he did not feel like a burden. He did not feel broken. Someone had looked at him without judgment. He wondered who she really was. He wondered why her kindness felt so different. And deep inside, he wondered if this small moment was the start of something he had always believed was impossible. Mira woke early the next morning, long before the other human servants. She walked through the quiet palace halls with a small basket of cleaning tools, but her mind was not on work. She kept thinking about the prince she helped the day before. She had never met anyone like him, gentle, intelligent, and lonely in a palace full of people. Most humans would have feared speaking to a dragonkin prince, but Mira felt something different. She saw not a royal figure, but a young man who carried a heavy weight on his shoulders. She could not forget the look in his eyes when he thanked her. It was the look of someone who had spent years being treated like he was broken. She did not like that. As she walked through another long hallway, two older human servants whispered to each other. "I heard the prince fell again," one said. "He always does," the other replied. "Poor boy. But what can we do? We're just humans." Their words made Mira stop. She clenched her hands around her basket. Being just human had never stopped her before, and she did not want to start now. Later that day, Mira received her new work assignment, the prince's wing. It surprised her, but she accepted it with a calm nod. Some servants stared at her with wide eyes. Serving a prince was considered dangerous. If she made a mistake, it could cost her everything. But Mira did not fear the task. She felt it was right. When she reached Kale's room, she found him sitting near the window again, reading an old scroll. He looked up when she entered. His face held a mix of surprise and something softer. "You came back," he said. "I was assigned to this wing," she answered. "But I'm glad to see you again." Kale's cheeks warmed slightly. Most people did not speak so openly to him. Mira did not treat him like a fragile stone or some symbol of failure. She treated him like a person. She began tidying the room. As she worked, Kale watched her with quiet thought. "Most servants avoid me," he said after a moment. Mira did not look up. "Why?" "They think I bring shame to the empire," Kale replied. "They think a prince who cannot stand is a burden." Mira paused her movements. She set down a cloth and faced him. "You are not a burden," she said simply. "You're a person. You're a prince. And you're brave." Kale blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had ever called him brave. "Why do you say that?" he asked softly. "You're still here," Mira answered. "You didn't give up even when everyone else did." Kale felt those words settle deep inside him. They reached a place he thought had already died. He looked down at his legs. "But I still cannot walk." Mira stepped closer, kneeling so she could look him in the eyes. "Maybe you can't now," she said, "but that doesn't mean you never will." Her voice was quiet but strong. It carried a confidence he had not felt in years. Kale stared at her. "Dragon healers tried everything." "Human hands haven't," Mira replied. Kale tilted his head. "You think you could do something?" Mira nodded slowly. "I don't know what yet, but I won't bow to fate. I won't accept that this is the end of your story." Kale did not know whether to laugh or doubt her, but something about her tone made him want to believe. Before he could say anything more, a sudden loud voice came from hallway. "Human servant," a dragon officer barked. "You are needed in the courtyard." Mira stood quickly and bowed to the prince before leaving. But as she stepped away, Kale caught a glimpse of something unusual. She walked with a confidence that was rare for humans here. She didn't shrink under the officer's stare, nor did she hurry like she feared punishment. The moment she was gone, Kale felt the room fall into silence once again. But this time, the silence did not feel as heavy. Later, when Mira finished her duties outside, she returned to the servant quarters. A group of humans were sitting together, whispering nervously. "Mira," one of them said, "we heard you're in the prince's wing. Be careful. The nobles don't like humans getting too close." "They don't like humans at all," another added. Mira listened, but she wasn't afraid. She was thinking of Kale's tired smile, his quiet strength, and his lonely eyes. She could not stand the way he was treated, like he was less than others because of something he could not control. When night fell, she sat on her small bed and whispered to herself, I can do something. I don't know what yet, but I will help him. She thought of the old medical books she had read on Earth. She thought of the machine she had repaired for her neighbors. She thought of her stubborn will that had helped her survive many hardships. She had always been a maid, yes, but she was also a fixer, a problem solver, someone who refused to accept that things must stay broken. And now, she had found someone who refused to give up, even when his own empire had given up on him. Kale needed someone who believed in him. Mira decided she would be that someone. She didn't know it yet, but the choice she made that night would change not only her fate, but the fate of the entire dragon empire. Kale did not sleep well that night. Myra's words stayed in his mind like a quiet fire that refused to go out. No healer, no noble, no advisor had ever spoken to him the way she did. She made him feel seen. She made him feel possible. The next morning, Mira returned to his chambers early. She carried a small pouch, tightly tied with strings. Kale noticed she seemed nervous, but determined. What's in the pouch? He asked. Something I'm not supposed to have, she said honestly. Kale raised a brow. That sounds dangerous. It probably is, she agreed, but she did not open it yet. Instead, she began her cleaning, moving around the room quietly. Kale watched her for a moment before finally asking, Why do you want to help me so much? Mira looked at him, because no one else tried. It was simple, and maybe because it was so simple, it felt more real than anything he had heard before. When she finished dusting the shelves, she sat beside him. Can I see your scales? She asked. Kale blinked. Humans aren't allowed to examine royal skin. I know, she said softly, but I think your problem isn't in your bones. It's deeper. Something is blocking your strength. Scales can show signs dragon healers miss. Kale hesitated, unsure. Scales were sacred. But Myra's eyes held no greed, no ambition, only honesty. Slowly, he pulled back the fabric around his legs. His scales were pale and dull. They looked fragile, like they had lost all life long ago. Mira leaned in carefully. They weren't always like this, right? She asked. No, Kale said quietly. When I was young, they glowed brighter than fire. Mira touched one scale with the tip of her finger. Kale tensed but did not pull away. Her touch was warm, steady, gentle. This isn't natural, she whispered. What do you mean? There's something under your scales, she said. A pattern? No, more like markings. Kale frowned. Markings. She nodded and took a deep breath. Kale, these aren't injuries. Someone did this to you. The prince froze. For a moment, he couldn't even breathe. Mira continued, her voice low and serious. I found a forbidden medical file yesterday. It was hidden behind the old supply cabinets. It said dragons can be weakened by certain runes. They are placed under the scales. They can stop a prince from standing if someone wants to keep him weak. Kale's heart pounded. Hard. Who would want that? He whispered. Mira didn't answer at first. She didn't have to. They both knew there were nobles who thought Kale unfit for the throne. Weak. Replaceable. Mira reached for her pouch. I didn't bring this for cleaning, she said, opening it. Inside were tiny human tools, things for delicate repair work. Small brushes, metal picks, soft cloths, and a small vial of medicine she had made from herbs grown secretly behind the servant quarters. Kale stared at her. You're not afraid? I'm terrified, she said honestly, but I'm more afraid of doing nothing. She placed the tools on the floor. I think I can remove one of the runes, she said. Just one. If we're lucky, it might help you feel something again. Kale swallowed. His voice shook. What if it hurts? It will, Mira replied gently. I won't lie to you, but you are strong enough. Kale let out a shaky breath. Then he nodded. Mira began working. She cleaned the area around one scale, then used a thin tool to lift it slightly. Kale gasped, gripping the chair. Mira stopped immediately. Do you want to continue? She asked. Kale closed his eyes. When he opened them, determination burned there. Yes. Mira kept going, slow and careful. Beneath the scale, a faint glowing mark appeared, a rune shaped like a twisting claw. Kale stared at it in horror. "It's real," he whispered. Mira crushed a small herb ball and pressed it against the rune. It sizzled softly. The glow faded. The mark broke apart like dust. Kale felt something then. A spark. A warmth. A pulse that shot up his leg like lightning. He gasped and grabbed Myra's arm. She nearly dropped her tools. "What? What happened?" she asked, scared. "I felt something," Kale whispered. "I haven't felt anything in my legs in years." Myra's eyes widened, shining with hope. "That means we're right," she said. "Someone has been keeping you weak." Kale looked at her, breath shaking. "And you just undid it." Mira shook her head. "No, we undid it." Before they could say more, they heard footsteps in the hall. Loud, armored, approaching fast. Mira quickly covered his leg again and swept her tools into the pouch. The door opened. A tall dragon noble entered, eyes cold and sharp. "Prince Kale," the noble said, "I heard strange sounds from your room. Is everything acceptable?" Kale looked at Mira, then back at the noble, and for the first time in his life, he did something bold. He gave Mira a tiny smile, one the noble couldn't see. "Everything is fine," Kale said calmly, but inside he knew the truth. Nothing was fine. Someone had sabotaged him, and now, thanks to one brave human maid, he finally had a chance to fight back. The palace grew quieter with every passing day, and Mira could feel the change long before anyone spoke about it. Servants whispered less, walked faster, and kept their eyes low. The air felt heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Mira knew why. Hope had returned to the Dragon Prince's room. Hope that was never meant to exist. Every morning, she entered Kale's chamber with the same warm smile. The prince sat up a little straighter now, his scales brighter, his eyes full of the fire that had been missing since childhood. He had begun to move his legs, only slightly, but enough to show that the impossible was no longer impossible. The healers avoided Mira. They passed by her with tight jaws, as if she was a threat to their pride. The royal advisors gave her sharp stares. News of the prince's improvement had spread, but instead of celebration, it brought fear. One afternoon, as Mira helped Kale stretch his weakened limbs, the prince spoke softly. "Mira, they are watching you." She looked up. "I know, but why? Shouldn't they be happy?" Kale's expression darkened. "If I walk, everything changes. Heirs fight for power. Old plans collapse. Some people do not want the throne to be strong." Mira froze. She had only wanted to help him. She had not thought about politics or power or royal battles. She was just a human maid from a small village. But now she stood in the center of something dangerous. That evening, 2 palace guards appeared at her small room. One spoke in a cold voice. "The advisors want to see you." Mira followed them through long stone halls until they reached the council chamber. Inside, the oldest advisor, Lord Verith, sat with folded claws. "You have done something unnatural," he said. "The prince's body does not heal. It cannot heal." "But he is healing," Mira said. "You have seen it." "That is the problem," Verith replied. "Your presence is creating false hope. You are interfering with the order of the kingdom." Mira felt her heart pound. "I am only helping him stand." Verith's eyes turned sharp. "If the prince stands, others will lose their power. You are a danger." A cold fear settled in her stomach. She left the room with trembling hands. When she returned to Kale, he immediately noticed her fear. "What did they say?" "They think I'm dangerous," Mira whispered. "They want to stop me." Kale's jaw tightened and faint smoke curled from his nose. "You are the only person who has ever helped me. They fear you because you bring strength they cannot control." He reached out and gently touched her hand. "Do not leave me. Not now." Mira swallowed hard. "I won't." But outside the prince's room, the palace was shifting. Guards whispered orders. Advisors held secret meetings. Something was coming, and she could feel it in every corner of the halls. Days passed, and the tension grew. Mira and Kale continued their quiet work. Every movement he made was slow, painful, but full of determination. One morning, he lifted his leg higher than ever before. Mira almost cried with joy. "You did it," she said, holding his arm. Kale looked at her with hope brighter than any sunrise. "Because of you." But before they could celebrate, a loud knock echoed through the chamber. The door swung open, and a line of royal guards marched inside. Their leader stepped forward. "By order of the High Council," he announced, "the human-made Mira is to be removed from the palace for the safety of the kingdom." Kale's wings flared in panic. "No, you cannot take her." The guard stepped closer. "She is a threat." Myra's breath caught. She looked at Kale, who struggled to rise, his legs trembling but moving with desperate strength. "Mira, stay behind me," Kale said. "Try to stand. Try and protect her with a body that had never been allowed to move." The guard stared in shock. The prince, who should not have been able to stand, was lifting himself off the bed, gripping the edge with fierce determination. "Do not touch her," Kale growled. Mira stepped forward, voice shaking. "Please stop. You'll hurt yourself." But Kale refused to fall back. His legs quivered, his claws dug into the floor, and for the first time in his life, he stood on his own, unsteady, shaking, but standing. The guards froze, unsure. The advisor's lies were breaking. The impossible had happened, and Mira realized the truth. The hope she had given the prince was no longer just hope. It had become a threat to those who feared change. And now, both she and Kale would have to face what that hope had awakened. The guard stood frozen, staring at the dragon prince who was standing on trembling legs. None of them had ever seen him rise before. No healer, no advisor, no ancient spell had ever helped him stand. Not even for a moment. But now, because of one human maid, the impossible was standing right in front of them. Kale wobbled, but he did not fall. Mira rushed to steady him, her hands gentle but firm. The prince's wings shook behind him. His scales glowed with a faint golden light that spread across his whole body. "Leave her," Kale said, his voice low but stronger than ever before. "She stays." The guards exchanged uncertain looks. Their orders were clear, but this changed everything. A prince who could stand meant a future no one had prepared for, a future the council feared. One of the guards finally lowered his weapon. "Your Highness, how is this possible?" Kale lifted his chin, though his legs trembled. "Because someone believed in me when all of you gave up." Mira felt her chest tighten. She wanted to speak, but the door suddenly burst open again. Lord Verith, the oldest and most powerful advisor, stepped inside with anger burning in his eyes. "This must stop," he hissed. "Sit down, Prince. You are not healed. You are endangering yourself and this kingdom." Kale looked at him with a new strength. "You were wrong about me. Mira has shown that." Verith's claws tightened around his staff. "A human girl does not change fate. She only disturbs it." Mira stepped forward, frightened but brave. "I didn't disturb fate. I just didn't give up." The advisor glared at her. "Hope is dangerous, human. It makes people rise when they're meant to stay low." Kale suddenly took a step forward, an uneven, shaky step, but a step. Everyone gasped. The advisor himself stumbled back in shock. "Hope," Kale said, "is what you feared most." The golden glow around his scales grew brighter. Mira realized it wasn't just light. It was something awakening inside him. Something old. Something powerful. Something that had slept for years while his legs lay still. Veritha's voice cracked. You were never meant to stand." Kale took another step. His body trembled, sweat forming on his forehead, but his eyes burned with determination. "I was always meant to stand," he said. "You were the one who made me believe I couldn't." "Enough." Verith raised his staff. A dark wave of energy formed at its tip. Mira moved before she could think. She stepped in front of Kale, arms spread wide. "Don't," she shouted. "He is your prince. You should protect him, not trap him." Verith hesitated, but only for a moment. The dark energy flashed forward. Kale roared, not in fear but in power. Wings spread wide. He pulled Mira behind him and slammed his claws onto the floor. A burst of golden fire erupted from his body, forming a shield that blocked the attack. The council chamber shook. The guards fell to their knees. The golden fire did not burn them, but it filled the room with heat, light, and strength. When the glow faded, Veritha's staff lay cracked on the floor. The advisor stumbled back, terrified. "You awakened a royal flame," he whispered. "But that flame appears only in a true ruler." Kale stepped forward, now more stable, as if each moment made him stronger. "I am the heir to the dragon throne, and I will rule with truth, not fear." The guards lowered their weapons and bowed. Mira watched in awe, hardly believing what she was seeing. Kale turned to her, and his eyes softened. "You brought me back to my feet," he said gently. "Without you, none of this was possible." Mira shook her head. "You stood because you were strong. I only helped." Kale smiled, a real bright smile. "Then stay beside me, not as a maid, but as someone I trust." Tears filled Myra's eyes. She bowed her head, not out of duty, but out of gratitude. "I will." Word spread to the palace like wildfire. Servants whispered with excitement. Guards lifted their heads proudly. The kingdom that had once given up hope now felt alive again. Later, as Kale and Mira stood on a high balcony overlooking the glowing city, the prince leaned against the edge, standing tall and proud. "It feels strange," Kale said softly, "to finally stand on my own." Mira smiled. "It suits you." He looked at her, his wings arching slightly in the breeze. "This is only the beginning, for me and for us." Mira nodded. "The impossible has already happened. Now anything is possible." And as the moon rose over the dragon kingdom, the prince who could not walk stood tall, his future bright, his kingdom hopeful, and the human maid beside him, who had turned fate itself upside down.